Anyway, we're doing it's a little bit different today for PastFinders. This is Delany Brewer. He's going to be talking about the history of video games. Pong, probably one of the first video games that were played by people, was created in 1972, which makes it over 50 years old. So, a lot of stuff can be almost considered antiques. And so you see a lot here, a lot of old gaming systems. And I even brought my old ColecoVision right over there. And a little bit of trivia, which the answer will be at the end of for the program after Delany speaks. There were two references. Logan County got references in two video games. Be thinking about what they may be. And you can't Google it because I know you won't find it.
What was the statement again?
There were two video games that make references to Russellville, or have a connection to Russellville.
Had a connection to Russellville.
Yes. Russell, Kentucky. All that. So I'll give the answer at the end. And so let's give Delany, Dale, a big hand. Welcome him.
So, but does anybody want to guess what year the first video game was made and what it might have been?
That was more commercial from what I said. It's a little bit different.
1960, early 1960s. It was I think it was developed by the DARPA program or something. Or one of the early computer labs, and it was basically a dot that you would shoot at. I believe. I can't remember the name of it though.
You're really close. Does anybody want to guess before I give the answer? Joel's really close. Josh?
Pong?
It's really similar to Pong.
Is it the ball breaking?
No, it's not Breakout. It is a game created by MIT, into which, when I say game, it's very loosely because it was effectively just it's called Tennis for Two. And it was basically a little projection, and you had this little laser right here that would go back and forth, simulating table tennis. And it goes all the way back to 1958.
You don't say that.
But yeah. So the first people to actually make a video game was MIT.
So what did they do? Were the students play that, or what was the?
So it was basically it was my understanding it was done as like a little side thing they did for fun, where they just had this. This is a part of a massive computer, and it's just they had this little screen and they basically have the graph set up like a game, and basically made it function as a game.
So the MIT one, did they market it or just?
No, this was just a little thing they did basically for themselves. Actual commercial video games would not take off for, yeah. But I just think it's neat that that's the first video game. All this comes from that. So video games are typically bunched up by generation. There are 9 generations, and unlike a lot of things that use the terminology of generation, there are new things coming out for multiple generations at once. So, 3 generations of consoles might have new consoles releasing in the same year. So you'll see a lot of the dates and years overlap between the generations, but that's why. But what is typically considered the first home console is the Magnavox Odyssey, which is the one pictured right here. And bear with me on this one. And it's not far off from, Tennis for Two, and the idea that it's basically, a black screen, and you've got little paddles, and it'll put it back and forth. But the neat thing about this is it is very much the one game on the console. And it is a console per game, and this is the way they would release it. And this first generation, they're just literally just figuring out the technology. But this generation goes from 1972 to the early 1980s. Basically, the way I'm doing this with the slideshow is I'm going to present some information, and if you guys want to ask any questions, ring of anything, feel free to. Yes?
So for this first generation console,
Mhm.
Did it have anything else besides the same premise of tennis for two and Pong?
No, that was the only game on it. Would be like whatever game it came with. Usually it was Pong. For a good long while, the most games you would get were some version of Pong. And then you have the second generation, which I like to call the Wild West of video games, because there was no locked in what you're supposed to do, what can be done. They tried a little bit of everything. And this generation goes from about 76 to 92, because again, a lot of these were supported years after, especially anything Atari. But this generation is more what people think of when they think of the original video games, like stuff with the little interesting controllers. If you guys want to see this, I'll pass them back. These are just little controllers. They're not connected to anything, so you can mess with them and it won't affect anything like up here. But yeah. This is around the time that they started to develop interchangeable game cartridges. And the first to do so was a system called the Fairchild Channel F. But this format was popularized by the Atari 600. And you can see the two pictured here. This is the Fairchild Channel F, and this is the Atari 2600. So basically, before this, they would have cards that did change the game, but in a way that was a lot messier. It wasn't that you had ones before that would change games, but they would basically they didn't hold the software on them. So you had basically keys before this, all the games would be on there, but you had the keys that would change the games. Whereas these have the games on them. So you weren't stuck to whatever games came with it. Does that make sense? The way I'm explaining it?
Perfect.
Yeah.
What's the one, I guess, console at the very top? Looks like an answer machine to me.
This one right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the Fairchild Channel F. This was the first one to really do cartridges, as opposed to cards that changed. It kind of sounds like semantics, but it really is these would come with the game on them, as opposed to the console having it and you just swapping what game you're playing. But yeah, that one was the first one to do it, and then the Atari 2600 is the one that popularized it.
It looks like there's quite a big change between the generations.
Yes, ma'am.
And this looks more familiar than anything else that you showed first.
Yeah, everything before this is kind of like, if you know, you know, whereas this is where it really became popular.
More for the masses, I guess you could
Yes.
say.
Atari, I remember that name.
Oh, well, how do I get into this much trouble with a mouse? I don't even have a keyboard hooked up.
It's technology.
All right. So, this leads us to the video game crash of 1977. It's pretty interesting. So, I'd mentioned before that a lot of the consoles came with the games on them. Well, when you have the consoles with just one game on them, basically there was a bunch of them that sprouted up. And to sell them, you have to sell a lot of them, as opposed to nowadays where you get, nowadays console sales, when they first come out, there's a lot of them bought and then it dips down. But then they make money on like the games and the services and the accessories, whereas they were literally trying to get you to buy more consoles. And most people, they can only buy, like, you're only going to buy like one Pong machine. You don't need, you don't need a second one. So a lot of them were being made to the point where the market got oversaturated and it just crashed, leading to a lot of companies to actually just full-on drop out of video games entirely.
So do you know how much the first video game, like how much did it cost?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I could look it up.
For what in particular?
Did you have a certain one you wanted to?
I'm just like the consoles that you had to buy.
Like the Magnavox Journey. How much would that have
Yeah,
cost?
so if you want to look at the price of the Magnavox Odyssey.
Is that your mouse that's slow?
Huh?
Is that your mouse that has a low battery?
No, that's my computer. In all my infinite wisdom, I forgot to plug up my computer. That should fix it. Yeah.
So, a Magnavox Odyssey in 1972 was released, like the introductory price was $99.95 or so, which would have been today roughly $770.
Yeah.
So
So these
you have
things
one or you
weren't
didn't.
cheap.
Yeah,
And it's just for one game.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's for Pong.
Yeah. Imagine paying $800 to play Pong. And they're surprised it went down and crashed.
Now, did they just make one game, or did they have like other games in there too?
Well,
like
it
another console?
wasn't literally one game, but a lot of times they would not come with many. They would, again, before cartridges were popularized, it was literally, they put games on there and you could change them, but like cartridges were when they started actually adding games to, where you could add games to your library. But I mean, by this point, it kind of just all became by the time cartridges were introduced, it was like, all right, it's either going to stabilize or crash, and it crashed. But, after it crashed and all the price went down, and most people hopped out, but companies like Atari kept going, kind of rode through the crash, and video games started to catch on more and more. And I'm sure they'll learn their lesson, right? They start making games that aren't Pong, like Space Invaders. They start making arcade cabinets. Instead of having to buy these, they make them more accessible by getting machines that a bunch of people can play. Arcades, like actual dedicated arcades, start to pop up. And that's really what brings video games out of the first crash. It's popular again. And they clearly learned their lesson, right? Look at all these new consoles sprouting up. I'll get it one of these days. The video game crash of '83. So, the video game crash of '83, or as it's known in other regions of the world, the Atari shock. Because this wasn't just exclusive to America. This one's a little different than the one before. It's almost the opposite problem. You have all these different games, all these people hopping into the video game scene, making tons of video games. But it's getting too big. There's too many games. A lot of them aren't very good. They're rushed out. Some of them, like the one represented here, this is a sprite from E.T. on the Atari. This game was made in 6 weeks. A game based off of one of the biggest films, like, to ever, come out, made in 6 weeks. And it was hated, mass-produced, hated, to the point that they had to take the remaining cartridges that would not sell, dug a big hole and buried them.
I bet that's a collector's item now. Find an ET game.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, it's definitely shelf candy.
Yeah.
I'll say definitely a collector's item. I don't know how much it gets played. I've actually played that game. It is not a good time. It is ET walking simulator, and then sometimes you die, you just randomly, and unless you know what's going on with the game, it does not explain it to you very well.
Is he green in the game?
Yes. I could actually, if you guys would like, show you gameplay of this game.
Sure.
All right. I'm actually going to take this down, just because there's no telling what I'll find on YouTube in between this and actually getting to the video. All right. Who here has seen E.T. or know what, like, the alien from E.T. looks like? I want everyone who's seen it to get a pretty good picture of E.T. in your mind.
That's not it.
Yeah, you walk around. This is the game a lot of people cite as the reason the video game crash of '83 happened, which it's not the entire reason, but games like this are a big cause of it.
So how's he scoring points?
I forget exactly how it works. I know the vague concept of the game is you're trying to get parts to go home while not getting captured. But
Scoring points on the bottom?
yeah, I couldn't tell you.
So these are
It's not
holes.
explained very well in the game. This is the kind of game you could play for hours and not understand why it does what it does. Like, it is honestly, like, what is that?
It looks like a deformed frog.
It's almost like a timer. The left-hand side is the point.
Yeah,
When it's going down.
it is going down. So I guess it is a timer.
So are those black spaces supposed to be holes?
I guess.
Yeah,
He just walked
a
over
lot
that.
of them are, if you go into them, you just fall in a pit.
Okay. Very cool.
Oh, wait,
Made in 6 weeks. Let's go.
The time jump backed up when you got the two. Whatever they were. I'm getting this game now.
Welcome to figuring out ET for the Atari Day, everyone. We're gonna have a good time. Put on your detective caps for this one.
I just feel like Ronald McDonald.
Kind of looks like the
Bandit.
man in the yellow hat from George, Curious George.
Here's George.
Yeah. I almost said George of the Jungle. Those aren't the same guy. But yeah.
One of them is
Nice.
not a guy.
I mean, you could see why people would get this and be like, maybe this video game stuff isn't for me. Like, but yeah. But the video game crash of '83, there's a lot of reasons it happened, but mostly, if you're trying to simplify it, it is a lot of low quality games releasing on a lot of consoles. And as we've mentioned before, those consoles are pretty expensive. Yeah. But as you can see, like video game revenue, plummeted from 3.2 billion down to this little gray square is covering it. 100 million in 2 years. So it crashed, and it crashed hard.
You jump out of any buildings?
I'm sure somebody did. I certainly would if I had
That's where my money was.
This is when the third generation comes in. This is what most people think of. And we've actually got a couple of these. One's right here, over here. If you look over here, and I can hold up what I'm talking about to the camera. This right here is the Sega Master System. This is a home console released with individual cartridges, and it is light enough that I will let you pass this around.
I was gonna look, but never mind.
I'm not going to pass the NES around.
I don't mind if you do it.
I know, but I'm just letting you know now I'm not doing that. Do you have the games with this?
Yeah, let me get
Now this is different from the one pictured. I don't go over this in the slides, but ever since ever since the first generation of video games, a lot of consoles will release a second version that is either better or cheaper in some ways, sometimes both. In this case, this is the second version of the NES, often referred to as the top loader, because as you can see on this one, this little flap opens and you push the games in, whereas this one, you quite literally load from the top. Yeah, I'm going to set this one back over here.
Did that go to a TV?
Yes, so these home consoles, you literally just plug them into your TV, and that's where they stay, much like a DVD player. There you go.
Did you get to see it?
Now, something we need to get out of the way. Bits. Whenever you hear something is 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit, 64-bit, it's basically referring to the graphics of whatever console or computer you're referring to. Without getting too into it, it's effectively how complex the things on screen can get and and how many different colors can be used. The more bits you have, the more complex and the more colors you can use for games, just displaying things in general, but in this case, we're referring to the games. For every time I talk about bits, there will be a Mario on screen showing the progression of the graphics. In this case, this would be 8-bit. Kind of get an idea. It's kind of simple, kind of simple, but you could still tell that's a guy. It's a guy in overalls. So, after the video game crash, the amount of companies in the video game market really diminished. But one company, Nintendo, who before this were making toys, playing cards, things like that. In Japan, they released the Famicom in '83, right as the crash was happening. Now, in Japan, it was marketed more as a toy. This would be the Famicom right here. Red and white color scheme, kind of small, looks pretty toyetic. This here, Famicom themed Rob the Robot, very toyetic. Small, little, really giving the toy vibes. But in America, they wanted to bring it to America, and they're like, well, they didn't want the toy vibes. They wanted you to think of it almost like a VCR. It's more. They wanted to make it make it look more powerful, more like a tool, more like. Again, they wanted to avoid the stereotype and the label of a toy. These are the same things. These are the accurate size comparison. So they made it bigger, kind of gave it more of a form factor of a VCR, and they released it over here. Again, we've got the individual cartridges like I had shown before, and they bundled in a little robot guy. This is Rob the Robot. I don't have an actual Rob the Robot because those are about $100 if you find them on the cheap end. But I have this little figure if you guys would like to pass it around. But this is the strategy that dragged video games out of the second crash. Here's this. It's cool, it's new, it's not a fleeting thing, which is part of what they wanted to show by bundling in a physical toy with it. And to show that it's, new and cool and awesome in the 80s. They included guns. Light guns. They don't actually shoot anything. But you kind of get the vibe we're going for, right? You're a little past toys, but it's still very much a kid's thing. See what I mean? These can also be passed around.
What age would like this kind of thing? What age child would like these?
See them. That's a
I think
robot, that's a
you're
cartridge.
looking at about 8 to 14 would be about the age. Depends on the kid,
remember
but
it, huh? Sir?
yeah.
Voila.
No.
Press the top power button on the controller one, it should work.
I am actually going to show you guys what one of these games would look like. Although I'm sure...
Press select, and then choose your game.
I'm sure you guys have seen at least one of these before.
You may want to go to S if you're looking for Mario.
Oh, is it going to be under Super Mario?
Yeah.
Okay. Valid.
It did not jump.
Hit the wrong button. There we go.
Start button. That should be good.
Which sound is diabolical.
Yeah, so there is no sound, but that's for a pretty good reason. I have more games to show you guys later, all pulled up on this computer at once. So, well, wait, not on this one. I've swapped computers. I can actually give you guys sound.
When was that released?
Yeah, 85. When it same year so the Famicom came out in 83. The Nintendo Entertainment System, which is what it was called over here, came out in 85. And this was, I believe, a launch game for it. So this came out the same day as the console itself. A lot of times this would also be packaged in with the game, or like with the console itself. Are you comfortable with me letting people?
Yeah, if I don't play it.
Anybody want to try it?
I never was any good at it, so I.
That's okay.
My son, he beat me every time, probably maybe every. My reaction time was never that good.
I've never been too good at this one.
Well, I'll tell you what, those kids can fly on it, man.
All three.
So you beat all three of them?
Yeah, the third one's my favorite, personally. There's an actually interesting thing about Super Mario 2. In Japan, Super Mario 2 looks like the game I just played, but it's way more difficult. And rather than bring that over here because they felt like it was too difficult for American audiences, they took another game from Japan, reskinned it with Mario characters, and released it over here.
So how does Donkey Kong fit in with this?
Donkey Kong?
Yes.
So, I kind of glossed past arcade games, but that is one of the many arcade games that pulled video games out of the first crash.
And so did Mario create Donkey Kong? Excuse me, Nintendo create Donkey Kong? or-
Yes. Actually, the name Donkey Kong comes from, they wanted to give the idea that, he was stubborn. And then, of course, Kong after,
King Kong.
King Kong. And that's where the name Donkey Kong actually comes from. But in Donkey Kong, you play as Jumpman, who would later go on to be known as Mario. So technically, Mario is a spin-off of Donkey Kong.
So are we not to Pac-Man yet?
Nope. That is more to do with arcades, so that in between the crashes, that's when you get Pac-Man
Okay, so that was in
in arcades.
the arcade era.
Actually, I believe the Atari port of Pac-Man is cited as one of the worst ports of Pac-Man. It's one of those many not great home console games that released that kind of flooded the market. Am I right on that?
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah, it's really bad. You want an interesting fact? Miss Pac-Man started as a fan game. I haven't brushed up on the details of it, but the long and short of it is that a bunch of fans of Pac-Man basically modded the game, changed a little bit of how it played, and made Pac-Man Miss Pac-Man. And Namco was like, that's really cool. And kind of co-opted it and started to release it. That's why for a while they actually didn't want to re-release it because the rights to it were kind of iffy for a while. Because it's technically a fan game. I don't know, I just think that's neat. You know, with ADHD meds, I'd be unstoppable. All right. Oh, there it is. That's why I wasn't doing the sound. But, yeah, so that is, with that generation, you have the NES, you know, you have the Sega Master System, and it's just pulling out of that, that crash and kind of figuring out what home consoles were going to be. You know, uniform controllers. At this point, controllers were starting to take shape. Before this, you know, a controller could be anything. I'll actually show you what I mean by this. These unplug, do they not?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't want to break it.
It's dirty.
I'm actually gonna take this with it as well, just to kind of show. But for a while, when it came to controllers, you never knew what you would get. You might get these style controllers where it's, you know, a joystick or a thumbstick or a pad, and you would have number pads. You would have number pads. You would have little balls. You would have like the Atari joystick and a button.
Do the number pads change games, or what would you use?
So this right here, it would just be like buttons assigned to it, and some of them came with little inserts that would come with the games, and it would overlay, and you would have different actions for each one. But again, it could be literally anything. It could be a wheel. It could be, you know, it could be pong paddles. But around this time, you start to see kind of a uniformity in that there is some kind of joystick or what is called a directional pad. So you have, you know, up, down, left and right, and then push two of them to go diagonally, you know, as well as like a start or select. Now, there's always going to be variation, but from this point forward, this is the standard. I'll actually pass a different one of these around. But I will pass these around if you guys would like to see them.
So what was the reason for the change?
The reason for the change, for the most part, is you would have these same games releasing on competing hardware, and basically uniformity as a way to make sure it could all work together.
Okay.
Because a lot of times there would be trouble porting things because you never, like, it would have drastically different control schemes. Here, put this right here. Oh, wait. Forgot about this. It was more or less a like ease of use. Made it easier on the people developing games and on the people playing the games. You really only got to understand one type of controller for the most part. That leads us into the fourth generation, where they took everything that they were learning from the third generation and kind of perfected it. Games were looking better, controllers were having more buttons, it was more streamlined. And it was basically I tried to give all these generations a theme. If the one before was figuring out what works, this is perfecting what works. Taking what they found and making it, the best it can be. This is the generation that gave you the Super Nintendo. So, as you can see, pretty similar to the controller I showed you before. It has the directional pad, select, start, but they've added 2 buttons. Games are getting a little more complicated, more features, more buttons, more things you can do. This is where we get 16-bit. The graphics are getting better. The actual systems themselves are getting more powerful. They're able to display more at a time. They're able to handle more going on. This generation is able to handle very limited 3D, which I can show you guys in a minute. But with that comes more you can do and more buttons. And this is where we start to see shoulder buttons. So as before, most console controllers had face buttons. So they're all right here, just on the face of it. Or now you start to get these that you press. Usually you press with your pointer fingers as opposed to your thumbs.
They can pass it around if you want.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. I get iffy when it's not my stuff. I don't want your stuff to get broken. Now, this is an interesting exception to what I've been saying. This is the Sega Genesis controller. It kind of follows the same thing. It has the directional pad, more buttons, but as a kind of a consequence as well of trying to make everything more uniform. This controller right here was eventually replaced with with one that had way more buttons. This one has the 3. There was eventually one that came out with 6. And it kind of made up for the fact that it doesn't have shoulder buttons. And I will pass that one around as well. As you can see, the graphics themselves are a bit more complicated. There's a bigger range of colors and a bit more detail. Bit more dynamic of a video game here, But I think I kind of got the point there. Things are advancing, but again, it's mostly just perfecting what we had before. one of the biggest leaps that this generation makes is the move, well, not the move, it hasn't moved yet, but the introduction of CD-ROMs to the equation. The first one to use CDs as like storage for the games and to actually play the games was the PC Engine CD-ROM, or as is known over here, the TurboGrafx 16. And while this is a development that's not really going to take effect in this generation, it is important because a lot of time discs are better for actually getting data off and in, like, and going quickly. Like it makes the game run quicker, usually. But during this time, it was a lot of add-ons, as opposed to them releasing with the ability to do CD-ROMs. They would have an add-on. But it is notable nonetheless because this will be more important later. Another development around this time is the Game Boy. This is really where like dedicated handheld consoles come into play. Because now video games are getting popular. People want to play them on the go. And while Game Boy is not the first or the most powerful at this time, it takes off because compared to other ones, it is cheaper. It is more convenient to carry around with you because it was one of these smaller ones. And it came, this is a Game Boy Color, but the original model was this one right here. They were affordable, durable, and convenient to carry around. And boy, let me tell you, they were durable. This Game Boy right here is famous because it was basically bombed. So during, I believe, I want to check myself on here, the Gulf War, and a soldier brought it with him, basically to play in his off time. And the entire structure got bombed, and in the rubble, they pulled this little guy out, and he actually sent it to Nintendo to see if they could fix it. Now, this thing is melted all to pieces. There was no fixing this, but Nintendo were like, well, let's see if it can even play a game, because the buttons are melted, you know, part of the motherboard is exposed. Let's see if it can even play a game. So they put Tetris in it, and to their surprise, it boots up. So they send the guy a new one and keep this one. And if I'm not mistaken, this is still on display in the Nintendo Museum to this day. Plugged up, like, it's the Game Boy that survived a bomb blast, like literally getting bombed.
Can you move the controls on it?
Oh yeah, no, the controls do not work. It boots on and it functions, but you can't play the game. Still impressive. Yeah. Like, I mean, this, you know, Darth Vader of a Game Boy here, still going.
It's a deal for Nintendo to keep as a historical.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, what's better marketing than our product can survive a bomb? Like.
I wonder if you paid the fellow anything for it.
I didn't see.
Gave him a new.
I know they sent him a new one, but I didn't see anything about them actually paying him any more than that. But
They sent him a replacement.
yeah, sent him a new one. But yeah, as far as I know, he didn't get any more compensation other than just a new Game Boy.
Probably get money for it now.
I'm actually going to pass this one around. This is a later revision of it. I don't talk about it in the slides, but this is a revision of the Game Boy called the Game Boy Color, which could play Game Boy games with certain color settings, but had its own games that were released for it that were exclusive to it that had color. Because this thing, I know the screen is green, but the games are in black and white. And the screen itself was green, so you would get this like green hue, but it wouldn't display any other colors. And from this, the Game Boy itself created a whole lineage, a lot of which I have up here. You have the Game Boy, the Game Boy Pocket, the Game Boy Play It Loud, the Game Boy Light, which was a version of it with a backlight. You have the one I passed around, the Game Boy Advance, which was a jump in power similar to the NES to the Super Nintendo. You had a revision of that, which actually did a clamshell design to protect the screen and had itself a backlight. They revised it with a better backlight, and they made an even smaller version called the Micro. Now, I do want to take a step back to talk about the Game & Watch. This predates the Game Boy. This is a little console about this big. And the story behind this is one of the people working at Nintendo saw someone on the train, and they were so bored they pulled out their calculator and started playing with it, just messing around with it just to pass the time. It's like, hey, what if we got like this little machine that, one is a watch and can play little games. So they started releasing a line called the Game & Watch. Now, the original ones didn't have an LCD screen, but I have a newer release of it that does, so I'm going to pass that around if you guys would like to see it. Yeah. And some of these, they had different form factors, different buttons, depending on the game you wanted to play, but much like early consoles, they had one, it was the game on it, that's the game you had. And they released other ones and you could get them. They had different form factors as well, like this one has 2 screens.
This like for headphones.
This right here, so this one in particular is just how you charge it.
Oh yeah, charger.
This is a later revision. This is basically to celebrate the anniversary of it. It's a newer one, so it takes modern chargers.
So they come out with, did they come out with attachments for the earpieces or headphones? At some point in time?
Yes. So, not so much for all the Game & Watches, but like the Game Boy, I believe the Game Boy doesn't have one, but the Game Boy Advance started to, I believe. So starting with the Game Boy Advance, you would have a aux cord port that you could plug headphones into. Now, I do know, this one does. Okay, I was wrong. This one does. But I know one of them you had to get an adapter for. But yeah. Yeah, and from the Game Boy, you get the Nintendo DS, which taking from Nintendo's roots with the Game & Watch, had 2 screens. And that spun off into its own little family. And over here we have something interesting. This comes a little later, but I'm not going to talk about it later. It's the Virtual Boy. This was Nintendo trying to do 3D. And what it was, it's this little headset, and it has this little stand, and basically you would set it down on the table and you would look into it. And you had this controller, and you would look in, and basically in the little eyepieces, there'd be this little red screen, much like the Game Boy screen where it was monochrome, but it was red. And it would basically display, a foreground and a background, and move between it, creating the 3D effect. It, however, was a huge flop. It did not sell well. Nintendo did not try it again until recently. They actually released a peripheral for the Switch 2 that is effectively this headset, and you put the Switch 2 into it, and you can play those games.
What does the DS mean?
Dual screen. So, yeah, it's Nintendo dual screen, and then the 3DS is a version of the DS that can do its own stereoscopic 3D. Yeah.
Makes sense.
And from that, we go on to the 5th generation. This generation is largely marked by the popularization of early 3D. It includes those such as the N64, the Sega Saturn, the PS1, and I believe that is the Atari Jaguar.
Is the main working of these are they like computer chips?
Mm-hmm. These are effectively very specialized computers.
Yeah.
Now,
So how far back did they utilize a computer chip?
I mean, well, when they first come out, they were marketed as home computers. So they've always been like computers themselves. They're just so specialized that you could never use them as a computer. Most of these, at least.
It was a chip like a computer chip.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
So it has like if you were to take these apart, you would have like a motherboard and like processors, and modern ones have are just full on PCs, effectively. The computer I'm giving this presentation on is a console in and of itself that is also a computer. So yeah, they are always have been computers, just very specialized computers.
Can't do like word processing or anything like that.
No.
They were developing this technology before the computer, the home computer. I know they had the big room computers,
Yeah.
which were cheap, like the old television. What do they call those? Bulbs, kind of. You ever looked at an old TV that has all
Yeah.
the tubes? And like, those were the old computers. They weren't chips. That's what I'm kind of getting at.
Yeah, I see what you mean, but it progressed alongside it. So you don't really see the Tennis for Two was an exception. That was made by MIT at MIT, and you really don't have them be full on at home computers until you get to the point where that was possible. And even then, they're very low powered computers that would be cheaper. Not cheaper, but like easier to make in such a small form factor. That's also why they were so expensive. It's because you're buying a specialized computer. And nowadays they are like, I mean, it hasn't really changed. That's just a very specific computer running a very specific OS. But it's set up to do very specific things. So does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know enough about it, but just enough to make me ignorant.
Well, I'd be honest, I don't know enough about the specs myself to really get too into it.
It just seemed like to me maybe they were a little ahead in the standpoint of maybe they might have been pioneers of the home computer.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, they definitely were.
Just because the time frame you were showing us, and the time frame of when they jumped from a cathode to computer to a chip computer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, I see what you mean now. Yeah, no, definitely. This video games as a whole isn't a lot for like the progression of computers, but it's always been one of those things where they go alongside it because at the end of the day, they are just computers. They can't really get too far ahead of like your normal like work or like personal computers.
Just a sidebar, I was, when I was about 4 years old, I was the ring bearer for a couple. He had just got out of engineering school at David Lipscomb. He and a friend were hired Texas Instrument, the first job.
Yeah.
And he held the patent for one of the, if not the first, one of the first computer chips.
It's really cool.
He lived in California for a while. Then he ended up in Texas. He's passed away now. But he was right there on the cutting edge of that stuff.
Heck yeah. Now, to give you guys an idea of the leap, I kind of have some comparisons. As you can see, Mario is a little doughier. He's kind of a little kind of, he's lost some definition, but he's 3D now, which is pretty cool. But it wasn't just 3D. You're now at 64 bits, which for a comparison, you have the SNES, which was at 16. Some consoles were jumping up to 32, and then this generation was known for being 64-bit. The Nintendo 64, what most people know from this generation, that's where it gets its namesake. But I didn't just want it to be 3D, I wanted to show you that the actual pixel graphics in games also got a boost up from this. One of these days, technology will work.
You can have sound with this one, right?
Yes.
The audio quality's gone up too with the generations.
And with each generation, the audio quality goes up. As you can see, Mario's 3D now. He's not just completely flat image. Now, another thing that this generation specifically had to contend with is you've added an extra dimension. Well, now you got to deal with, before you had the point of view, it's like you were watching someone from afar. Like you were watching Mario from over there. He's over there, he's running and jumping. Well, now you've got to deal with what's behind you, what's to the side of you. You effectively have to deal and be your own cameraman for your video game. And a lot of games and a lot of publishers really struggled with this. This game in particular chose to give you a literal character with a camera following Mario. Now this is a Nintendo 64 controller. This thing is weird, right? But there's a logic behind it. you effectively have 3 different configurations for this thing. You could hold it like this, which gives you access to all these face buttons, the start button, these shoulder buttons, and this thing down here if you need it. You have this configuration, which gives you a control stick and all these face buttons. Or you had this, which honestly didn't get used as much, but you have effectively 2 directional sticks, a directional stick and a directional pad.
And this is where your drone operators come from now, in the military.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny you say that. A lot of military equipment uses game controllers or game-like controllers. There's a lot of drones that straight up use, for a while, used Xbox 360 controllers. These. Because by this point in the generation, you have a whole camera stick and can look around and can move, and it was just comfy to hold, and like a lot of people at that point understood how it works.
I've heard of some Air Force, the cadet school, them losing students because they getting there get disenchanted. They thought they were going to get 5 planes.
Yeah.
They want so many people to do that, which that's not flying. They really want a physical
Remote
fly.
control.
They didn't want to go to play on a controller, but that's technology.
Yeah. But as you see, this has camera buttons. Later on, you would get a whole stick dedicated to the camera. In this case, I think it's mapped to it. But at this point in video games, it is still buttons. It is not quite figured out yet. So, at this point, I figured I'd run out of time, so I started going a bit faster with these generations. We get to the 6th generation. If the last one was getting introduced really and popularizing 3D, this one is kind of exploring it and using it to its full ability. Much how this generation is to the last generation what the Super Nintendo generation was to the NES generation. Taking all of that they learned and all of that they figured out and improving it. Now, I'm going to go back a little because you see right here, we have Xbox, PlayStation, we have GameCube. It's starting to look like what modern gaming looks like, but the PlayStation 1 is really interesting. Because the way it came about is Nintendo was going to partner with Sony to make a game console. And midway through all of that, Nintendo backed out. Rather than give up and go home, Sony took what they learned from Nintendo and made their own. And to this day, are a big player in the video game space. And starting with this generation, the PS2. I moved it over there. This right here. One of, if not the most popular console of all time. Really only rivaled by the Wii. In terms of like popularity and just how long it kept going. Both of these had games being made for it in the 2010s. That one I know in particular until 2017. Oh, well. I forgot how much I sped up. I don't have a slide for it, but At this point, we're doing 128 bits. To give you an idea of what that looks like. Does the Raspberry Pi have those consoles?
As far as it goes.
That's what I thought. Okay, so to give you an idea of that, at this point, the detail has gone up. They've learned their lesson. They have a camera stick now. More buttons, still a directional pad. And the back buttons. And at this point, gaming starts to come into being what it's going to be for the next 20 years. 3D is perfected, they understand how it works. And from there, it's just a march towards realism. From this generation on, every bump in a generation is just a bump in graphics at this point. You have your gimmicks, like with the Nintendo Wii. But overall, it really just is, how realistic can we make this game? How big can we make this game? And the biggest leaps we see moving forward is in online multiplayer, playing worldwide. And the games themselves don't change a lot aside from looks. So the last thing we do here as I wrap up is I'm just going to give you an idea for the jump in graphics we see. It really is. That style of controller gets perfected with the PS2 and the PS3 moving forward. I apologize. I had this pulled up, and it went away. So as you can see, quite a big jump from what I showed you before. Get more realistic environments, more realistic textures.
There's another one coming. And this one's on, log tech and sign. Everyone wants to get in on the go.
This is another step up. Again, more realistic textures, more dynamic lighting.
And kids love to do that.
Even with more stylized games.
Mark, these are not.
You start getting bigger worlds, more powerful hardware, bigger worlds, more stuff you can load in.
What's the real
Fortnite?
It's a
Battlefield?
Battlefield, I guess.
Battlefield? Like, oh yeah.
Yeah, that's is that more advanced than this?
It depends on the Battlefield game. The modern ones are on par with this game right here, which is a bit more stylized, but the modern Battlefield ones run on exactly what I'm running right now, which is the Series X. But yeah, from there on, it really is just a matter of how good can we make this look, how big can we make these open worlds, and how many people can we get playing together.
Where do you see AI coming in this? Or it probably already is. Some are just affecting, just taking it to.
So far, it has affected it. It has affected it in mostly in terms of two things. AI being used as a shortcut to get a lot of low quality games out, referred to as AI slop, and as well as in another way it affects it, because as the rise of AI and the rise of like data centers and mass buildings, you need computers for that. You need computer parts. And actually, the rise in AI has actually made making game consoles more expensive because now they're competing for the parts. So it has already affected it. As for how it affects it going forward, that entirely depends on where it goes from here, whether the AI crashes, keeps going, advances. But we'll just have to wait and see. With that, I'll just take questions.
Where do you see gaming going in the future?
Where do I see it? Well, right now with gaming, we're at a point where the jumps between generations aren't as noticeable. Like the graphics are to a point where making them look better doesn't do as much as it used to. The worlds are getting to the point where making them any bigger is unrealistic. I think another groundbreaking like change in form, similar to the adding of a new dimension and going from 2D to 3D, is probably the next thing to really happen that'll be notable. Otherwise, I think we'll just kind of sit in this state we're at now where there's just kind of what's come before and iterations on that. I see the rise of indie games is kind of what's happening right now. Like it's a lot easier for individual people to make games. The internet has helped out a lot with that. And another neat trend with games, and I think this will be important moving forward, is PC gaming has started to kind of intertwine itself with consoles. The computer I was doing this presentation on is effectively a console. It's a device called the Steam Deck. I think machines like this are kind of what's going to move it forward. Just kind of working it into other products until we get another huge leap. I think it's really just going to sit where it is until we get the kind of leap you could never anticipate.
Like jacking it to your back like the Matrix.
Yeah, I hope not.
Yeah.
we kind of stepped in that direction with VR, which I didn't really get into that much, but something like that. A big leap that fundamentally makes this a different kind of experience.
Any other questions or remarks?
I think speaking of the future of gaming, I think another thing we could look for in the near future is the move to subscription services like Netflix. And movies have moved to subscription and streaming services, and I think we're going to see that near term get more and more widespread. Most of the games I play now are from subscription services, Game Pass, PlayStation Plus. And so near term, that's probably going to be you're going to see that really pushed in the video game space. That's going to be the business model going physical CDs and physical cartridges to streaming. I stream some games, like straight, instead of downloading it and playing it, I stream it from a data center. And, it's streamed directly to my console instead of, playing it from the console, if that makes any sense. But I think the immediate future, that's the big thing that's gonna happen, is streaming subscription
Yeah.
services.
Great. They utilize the cloud for that?
Yes.
Yes.
They do utilize the cloud for that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. That's already happening with Game Pass. It's happening. What's the PlayStation equivalent called?
PlayStation Plus.
Yeah, it's plus
Is it just part of Plus now?
Yeah.
Okay, but like,
the game streaming.
yeah, the game streaming. You're seeing it with a little bit with Nintendo. I didn't bring it out. Nintendo Switch 2 being able to stream to a Nintendo Switch 1 with the game share ability.
The fact that all games are now online stored.
Yeah, and yeah, I agree. I do see that. I mean, I guess I didn't really think of that because it's kind of already happening,
Yeah, it is.
and it's not my favorite thing.
It's a very divisive topic in that space, for sure.
It's definitely handy if you don't have the console, if you don't have a dedicated current gen console. Any more questions?
Any watch technology that utilizes put games on? I mean, that'd be a very small area to do it, but
Not to my knowledge. I know some smartwatches have games on them that you can play,
that's what
but those, to my understanding, are very basic games.
Very rudimentary.
Yeah,
kind of like getting back to the elementary.
yeah. Like you'd get like Snake, kind of the same thing with like the old phone games.
Nokia's.
Yeah, like the old Nokia phone games, but not anything groundbreaking or substantial to my knowledge.
I wouldn't think you would get much satisfaction out of playing on a watch.
You'd be surprised.
I mean, it'd be nice. I mean, it'd be nice and handy for you.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have to carry something around.
You say that, but there was a fad where they would take little tiny, very basic video games and put them on a watch. And I'm talking real basic. What do you remember what they're called, Joel? You know what I'm talking about, though, don't you?
Yeah, I don't remember what they're called.
But that has been a thing before. It was kind of a fad, but an interesting one.
Apple can do a lot of things with a watch now.
Yeah. I wish it geared more towards games and less toward knowing where you're walking.
How fast your heart's beating.
Because one change by gaming is that used to, you all had to sit in the same room together to play, and now you can play with somebody in another country.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, you could play with people across the world. You can. I think an underrated development is crossplay. If a lot of consoles or computers, if they're similar in power and can play the same game, most games nowadays, you don't have to be on the same type of console to play it. Like this thing right here, the 360 and the PS3 over here are the same console generation. And before, if you had the exact same game on there as you did over there, they couldn't play with each other. But nowadays, most big games, it doesn't matter. And that I think is an underrated development, in my opinion. Like I play with, this game right here is a good example, Marvel Rivals. This can run it, that PS4 can run it. This is obviously currently running it, but all three of these things are, vastly different specs, vastly different machines. But if I boot all three of them up, put them on this game, they can all three play with each other. One of the wonders of modern gaming.
It's like that and everything else, though. There's people that tend to use them for good, and people who tend to use the technology for evil too.
Oh yeah, definitely. But for the most part, video games are just used to entertain.
They're addictive.
I feel like there's been a drastic incline in predatory tactics when it comes to video games.
Well, I mean there is, but
With
that's
like
anything that gets popular is like that.
Yes.
But that's also been, for most games, taken care of or gotten to a point where it's not a huge issue. But I'd say,
The real kicker, it's on here. That predatory tactics.
yeah, I'd say that's more an internet thing than a video game thing.
Any other questions?
Yeah, that's,
Going once, going twice.
there's no other questions. We ended here.
Let's give Dale a big hand.
Thank you guys for bearing with me. This is the first presentation I have given in about 6 years. So,
I thought you did a really good job.
are you sure? That sounds. I think it's a bit high of a grade. Like there was a lot of ums and ums and technical difficulties. Like,
Oh, well.
I think a C at best.
See it best.
C at best.
What about an A minus?
A minus.
Yeah.
I was gonna say,
For real?
you get a B plus on like a genuine
Yeah.
technical grade.
Well, I'm glad you guys liked it.
Yeah, well. Next month it's going to be Earl Henry Jr. and he's going to be talking about World War II. His father died in World War II, and he never got to meet him. And but his father left a whole bunch of bird paintings, and so he's going to be showing those off and talking about his father's history.
Where is he from?
He's from Nashville, and so he had
Way more interesting. I'm glad I'm not following that guy up. Like,
yeah, it's like you can come for that. All of y'all can come for this. And does anybody know the video games have connections to Russellville?
No, I've been waiting for this one.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Now,
You do knew that.
One of the landing spots is the Russellville Airport. It doesn't look anything like Russellville, but you know that's what it is. And the
it's there in spirit.
the EA's NCAA football game has Mikey Benton as a character on there. And he was a Russellville High School coach there one time.
Nice.
So those are our little connections
We
to
love
the.
Mikey Benton. He's so fun.
So there you go. And I hope to see y'all next month.
Thank you.
Of course. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
That was really interesting.
Yeah.
I've never played a
Thank you for
video
coming,
game
sir.
in my life. Of course, my kids have. But it was really interesting.